On August 12, 1849, Charleston baked under a blistering southern heat. The harbor was alive with merchant ships heavy with rice, cotton, and indigo, symbols of a city built on profit, soaked in human misery. Grand mansions along the Battery swayed with sea breeze elegance, but just a few blocks inland, the real machinery of Charleston operated without apology. The slave markets, the auction house on Chalmers Street, looked ordinary from the outside: brick walls, barred windows, a cramped courtyard, but inside, human lives were priced with the cold precision of livestock. Samuel Rutledge, the auctioneer, prided himself on his ledgers. 15 years in the business had taught him to catalogue people like assets: age, strength, scars, temperament, skills. Everything reduced to numbers, everything for sale. That morning he had 12 souls to sell. 11 were standard field hands from a plantation drowning in debt. The 12th wasn't standard at all. A boy, no older than 7, silent, thin, dark-skinned in a way that made his origins impossible to place, and holding guarding a leather-bound journal as if it were a piece of his soul. The trader who delivered him, Harrison Vance, looked uneasy. Sweat rolled down his face as he explained. Found him in Savannah. Portuguese captain had him. Mother died at sea. Fever took her. Someone paid to bring him ashore. Captain wanted to throw him overboard. I just want him gone. The boy never spoke. Not a whisper, not a cry. His eyes tracked every movement, sharp and unsettling for a child. When Rutledge tried to take the journal, the boy's grip tightened, knuckles white. Inside were flowing foreign letters: Arabic, Vance guessed, or something like it, valuable or worthless. No one knew. How much? Rutledge asked. $5, Vance snapped. Take him and the cursed book. Rutledge paid. In his ledger he wrote the bare minimum. Male child, approx. 7, origin unknown, mute, arrived with foreign journal. Then he moved on. By noon, 11 people had been sold. Only the boy remained. Rutledge expected to take a loss. Too small to work, too strange to place. Buyers didn't want mysteries. They wanted labor. Then a man stepped from the back of the crowd, tall, northern accent, dressed too neatly for Charleston, his expression blank and unreadable. I'll give you $3 for the child, the stranger said, and I'll take the journal as well. $3 was an insult. Rutledge opened his mouth to refuse, but something in the man's tone froze him. The stranger didn't sound like he was bargaining. He sounded like he already owned the outcome. The book is worth more than that, Rutledge protested. The stranger didn't blink. The book is worthless to you because you cannot read it. The certainty in his voice sent a chill through Rutledge's spine. He had bargained with planters, politicians, foreign traders, but this man was different, dangerous without threat, calm without warmth. Rutledge hesitated only a moment. Then, done, the stranger set 3 silver coins on the table, took the boy by the hand, and walked out. The child held his journal against his chest, as if afraid the world might rip it away. Hours later, Rutledge tried to recall the stranger's face. He couldn't. The details slid away like mist. He blamed the heat, the whiskey, the long day, but deep down he knew better. The child and the stranger boarded a steamer north. No surviving manifest recorded their names. No witness ever described them. They simply vanished into the world until a month later, when a silent, dark-eyed boy with a foreign journal appeared at a hidden Quaker school in rural Pennsylvania. The Quaker school near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, didn't look like a place where history began. It was a plain wooden building surrounded by quiet fields, tucked far from main roads for a reason. It taught free black children openly and taught escaped slaves secretly. No signs, no records, only trust, only caution. On the night of September 18, 1849, Patience Hadley, the school's founder, heard an unexpected knock long after dark. When she opened the door, a tall man stood on the steps, face half hidden in the lantern glow. Beside him was a small boy holding a leather journal so tightly it looked fused to his hands. He needs safety, the man said, and someone who can teach him. Patience asked his name. The boy didn't speak. The man didn't answer either. Instead, he placed a pouch of gold on the table, $50, far more than any child's schooling cost. He must learn to read and write English, and the book stays with him, no matter what. Before she could ask another question, the man stepped back into the shadows and vanished as if he'd never been there. Patience studied the boy. His clothes were too big. His face was tense, guarded. His silence wasn't shyness, it was trauma carved deep. When she touched the journal, he jerked it away, eyes sharp with fear. Over the next weeks, she watched him closely. He learned English quickly, faster than any child she'd taught. He wrote with careful precision, studied before dawn, and memorized entire passages of text after reading them once. Yet he never revealed his name. The other children called him Book because the journal never left his grasp. Patience tried many times to see inside it, but the boy always positioned himself between her and the pages. She didn't push. She'd taught enough wounded souls to recognize the difference between stubbornness and survival. But strangers began appearing, men passing through town, asking too many questions about new students, children who arrive alone, or anyone carrying unusual belongings. Each time Patience lied, claiming she knew nothing. By early 1850, she understood the truth. Whoever had owned that journal, whoever had written inside it, whoever had protected it, their enemies were still hunting for it. And the boy was the last link. That was when Patience made a quiet decision that would shape the rest of his life. She would protect him, even if it meant putting her school and herself in danger. The child didn't know it yet, but the fight for the truth his mother died protecting had only just begun. By the spring of 1853, the boy had lived at Patience Hadley's school for nearly 4 years. He spoke fluent English now, wrote with remarkable precision, and absorbed knowledge with a hunger Patience had rarely seen in any child. But even as he grew, the journal never left him. He hid it under his shirt when he walked, slept with it under his pillow, read it at night by candlelight when he thought no one noticed. Patience noticed, and she also noticed something far more troubling. The visits, every few months, a stranger arrived in Lancaster, always a different man, always with a polite smile that never reached his eyes. They asked innocent questions at first. New children, any foreign-born students, any unusual belongings, but their real intent was obvious. They wanted the boy. They wanted the book. Patience refused them every time, her voice steady, her hands calm, but her heart pounding. She knew danger when she saw it, and danger was now circling the child like wolves around a single lamb. In May of that year, a scholar passed through Lancaster, Dr. Edwin Hartwell, a linguist from Philadelphia, with a reputation for studying ancient and obscure languages. Patience made a risky choice. She showed him the journal. Hartwell examined it 4 hours, at first curious, then unsettled, then visibly shaken. When he finally looked up, his hands were trembling. Where did this come from? He whispered. Patience kept her voice firm. It belongs to a student, a child. Why? Hartwell closed the journal carefully, as if afraid of damaging something priceless. This is Arabic, but not modern Arabic, old, mixed with symbols used in North African merchant records from the 1700s, and the content. He rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. Mrs. Hadley, the information in here would be considered dangerous. Dangerous enough that powerful men, very powerful men, might kill to keep it buried. Patience felt the floor tilt beneath her. What does it say? Hartwell shook his head. The less you know, the safer you are. But I'll say this, it documents lies that built the slave trade. Lies written on purpose. Names, places, crimes, proof. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Protect that boy. If the wrong people find him, they will not hesitate. And whatever happens, never let this journal out of his hands. Hartwell left town the same night and never returned. 2 weeks later, Patience's worst fear arrived. 3 men broke into the schoolhouse in the dead of night. They moved with purpose, pulling open drawers, tearing apart beds, ripping through personal belongings. They demanded to know where the boy was, where the foreign book was, shouting threats when the children refused to speak. Patience and her older students armed themselves with hunting rifles and confronted them. Shocked by resistance, the intruders fled into the dark. But the message was clear. The boy was no longer safe. The next morning, Patience sat him down. For the first time, she asked the question she had never dared ask. Child, do you know what your mother wrote in that journal? The boy looked at her with eyes far older than 11 years. My mother told me, he said quietly. She said it's the truth about where we came from, about what was stolen from us. She said powerful men erased our history and replaced it with lies. She said this book proves it. His voice didn't tremble. He wasn't guessing. He was remembering. And she told me, the boy added, that they would kill anyone who tried to reveal the truth. Patience fought the chill running through her blood. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we must keep you alive. That night, using Underground Railroad contacts, she arranged safe passage north. The boy would travel to a free black community near Albany. A family named Thatcher would take him in. Before dawn, she handed him a small purse of money and a letter of introduction. He hugged her only once, quick, tight, and silent, then walked away with the journal hidden beneath his coat. Patience watched from the doorway as he vanished down the quiet road, a small silhouette carrying a burden no child should ever carry. She never saw him again. But the truth he carried, the truth written by a dying mother, was now moving north, deeper into a country inching toward civil war. The boy reached Albany in the summer of 1853, the weeks of careful, hidden travel along the Underground Railroad. Conductors passed him from safe house to safe house, like a fragile package, never asking questions. Never touching the journal he kept pressed against his ribs. By the time he stepped into the small free black community outside the city, he looked older, harder, as if the journey itself had carved years into him. Marcus and Judith Thatcher welcomed him without hesitation. Marcus, a cooper who crafted barrels for merchant ships, had earned his freedom decades earlier. Judith had been born free. They had no children. The boy became theirs without ceremony. For the first time in his life, he was allowed to choose something. His name. He stood by the workbench in the Thatcher's shop, surrounded by the smell of fresh wood and warm tar, and said quietly, Thomas Freeman. Thomas for a new start. Freeman for what he intended to become. The Thatchers asked no questions about his past. They only taught him how to measure wood by eye, how to calculate volume inside curved barrels, how to shave staves smooth without wasting material. Thomas learned faster than Marcus could teach. His mind worked like precision tools, sharp, clean, exact. But when he wasn't bending wood or sealing barrels, Thomas read, and when he wasn't reading, he studied the journal, always in private, always in silence. He buried it beneath the workshop floor wrapped in oiled leather, retrieving it only at night. The words inside were no longer mysterious shapes, he could read them now. He understood what his mother had copied, what she had risked her life to preserve. The journal exposed the slave trade as deliberate fraud, documents forged, free men kidnapped, African merchants lied about, murders disguised as accidents, entire families erased, so American fortunes could rise without challenge. It named names, old names, wealthy names, names still powerful. Thomas didn't yet know what to do with the truth, but he understood one thing clearly. He would not let it die with him. Years passed. Albany changed around him. Political arguments filled the streets, abolitionists clashing with men whose profits still relied on Southern ties. Newspapers debated slavery was an abstract theory instead of a daily nightmare. Thomas watched, listened, and waited. By 14, he was Marcus's full partner in the cooperage. By 17, he had saved enough to buy a small house of his own. And all the while, strangers continued appearing in northern towns, quiet men asking quiet questions about a boy from the south and a foreign journal. Thomas never let his guard drop. Then in April 1861, the first cannon fired at Fort Sumter. The nation split open. War didn't frighten Thomas. It clarified things. He saw what his mother's journal predicted. The lies at America's foundation were unraveling, and the country could no longer survive pretending otherwise. The truth was coming due. But in November 1862, truth came knocking on his door. In the form of a man from Washington. Not a hunter. Not a stranger searching for the journal. But someone who claimed to be from the War Department. Someone who already knew far too much. In November 1862, the knock on Thomas Freeman's door came just after sunset. 3 deliberate raps, steady and confident. Thomas opened it expecting a customer, maybe a neighbor. Instead, he found a man in a dark military coat, posture straight as a rifle barrel, eyes sharp with purpose. I'm Colonel Isaac Brennan, the man said. War Department, Washington. Thomas felt the familiar prickle of danger crawl up his spine. Men who introduced themselves with full confidence were usually telling the truth or lying for a very specific reason. Either way, they were trouble. Brennan stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He surveyed the small house like he was memorizing exits, furniture, weaknesses. Then he spoke plainly. We need information about certain families in the South. Their business dealings, their past, their connections. You have something that may help us. Thomas kept his voice neutral. I don't know anything about Southern families. Brennan's eyes narrowed. You've kept a journal hidden since you were 7 years old. Your mother's journal, written in Arabic and detailing transactions from the 18th century. Thomas's pulse thudded in his ears. The journal was buried under floorboards in a sealed pouch. No one in Albany knew. No one alive from his past should still be searching. Yet this man said it casually, like reporting the weather. How do you know about that? Thomas asked. That doesn't matter. Brennan replied. What matters is the war. Men are dying by the thousands, and the information in that journal might expose Confederate supply networks, illegal financing, and powerful families funneling money into the rebellion. You have a duty to your country. Thomas felt anger twist in his chest. I've had a duty since before I knew what the word meant. Brennan's tone hardened. Mr. Freeman, President Lincoln has suspended habeas corpus. If I want to search this house or arrest you, I don't need a warrant. But I'd prefer cooperation. Bring me the journal. Thomas stared at him, weighing options he didn't really have. The journal wasn't just history, it was blood. His mother's blood. It carried everything she died to protect. I need time, Thomas said. Brennan stepped toward him, voice low. You have 3 days. After that, I return with soldiers. When the door closed behind Brennan, Thomas stood in silence, fists clenched. The war had found him. The truth he'd carried all his life had finally caught up. That night, he pulled the journal from its hiding place and read it again by lamplight. His mother's handwriting ran across the pages, meticulous, patient, fearless. Her last written words echoed in his mind. Truth is a weapon, but weapons can wound the one who wields them. Choose your moment carefully. The moment had arrived. But Thomas wasn't going to hand Brennan the original. He owed his mother more than that. For 3 days and nights. He worked without sleep. He transcribed the entire journal by hand into a new ledger, translated Arabic into English, added footnotes, ship records, newspaper clippings, anything that would make the document impossible to dismiss. When Brennan returned on the 3rd day, Thomas handed him the thick, carefully organized transcript. Where's the original? Brennan asked. Safe, Thomas said. This is what you need. Everything in it is verifiable. Use it however you think best for the Union. Brennan studied the pages, impressed despite himself. You realize who this will anger. These families still hold power. In Washington, in banks, in Congress. Then maybe, Thomas said quietly, it's time someone told the truth about how they built that power. Brennan nodded once. Very well. You've done your country a service. But Thomas saw something in the Colonel's eyes before he left a warning he hadn't spoken aloud. The journal was now in the hands of the government. And powerful men do not let their secrets go quietly. Within weeks, Thomas would learn just how true that was. For 3 months after Colonel Brennan took the transcript, silence wrapped around Thomas like a tightening rope. No updates, no letters, no confirmation that his mother's truth was being used or even believed. But danger didn't stay silent. It arrived quietly, then struck hard. The first warning came as smoke. One icy night in February 1863. Thomas woke to shouting outside his window. Flames clawed up the side of the warehouse next to the cooperage. The fire spread fast, tearing through wood like it had been waiting years for this chance. Marcus and Judith Thatcher rushed into the street with buckets alongside neighbors. Thomas joined them. But even as he fought the flames, he knew this wasn't an accident. The fire had started exactly where it would do the most damage and exactly when he had become valuable to the wrong people. When the flames were finally smothered, the local constable shrugged and muttered something about bad lantern placement. Thomas said nothing, but every instinct screamed the same truth. Someone wanted to warn him. The second warning came a week later. On his way home from the market, Thomas noticed a man standing at the corner, hat low, coat too heavy for the weather, posture too still to be innocent. Thomas walked past him, pretending not to notice. An hour later, he saw a different man in a different coat, watching the cooperage. The next day, a third man trailed him through Albany's narrow streets. Strangers, rotating faces, same purpose. Thomas confronted one of them. Why are you following me? The man flashed a badge weakly, briefly. Federal Marshal, investigating Confederate sympathizers. But when Thomas demanded to see the badge again, the man turned and vanished into a crowded street without a trace. Marshals didn't run, spies did. Then the letters started disappearing. Friends wrote to ask why he hadn't replied. Letters Thomas never received. Envelopes addressed to him arrived opened, clumsily resealed. Orders for barrels were cancelled without explanation. Customers avoided him in the street. The pressure built slowly, deliberately. They weren't trying to kill him yet. They were trying to isolate him. Finally, Marcus Thatcher sat him down at the workshop table, the two of them surrounded by half-shaped staves and drying barrels. The old man's face was graver than Thomas had ever seen. Son, what have you gotten yourself into? For the first time, Thomas told him everything. The journal, his mother, the sale in Charleston, the years of hiding, the transcript. Brennan. Marcus listened in silence, jaw hardening with each detail. When Thomas finished, the old man exhaled slowly. You poked a hornet's nest, boy. And these aren't common hornets. These are the sort of men who burn down lives like clearing brush. What do I do? Thomas asked. You leave, Marcus said firmly. Tonight if possible. I have a cousin in Michigan. Runs a lumber mill outside Saginaw. No one there knows you. No one there will look for you. Stay a year, maybe 2. Let this storm pass. Thomas hated the idea of running. It felt like surrender. It felt like betraying his mother's work all over again. But staying meant putting Marcus and Judith in danger. And danger had already found their doorstep. That night, Thomas packed only essentials, clothes, a little money, and the original journal wrapped in oilskin. He hugged Judith, shook Marcus's hand, and boarded the night train to Buffalo without looking back. It was the last time he would ever see them. *3 weeks later. The cooperage burned to the ground. Marcus died in the fire. Judith survived long enough to recognize Thomas's handwriting in a final letter he sent before her injuries claimed her too. The official report called it an accident. Thomas knew the truth. He hadn't run away to save himself. He had run away to save them and failed. In a small rented room near Michigan lumber mill, Thomas sat alone with the journal open on the table. Lit by a single lantern, he stared at his mother's words, the ones written decades earlier. Truth survives only when someone is willing to bleed for it. Now others had bled. And Thomas understood something he hadn't understood before. The truth he carried would either destroy him, or he would destroy the men trying to bury it. The moment Harriet's article hit the presses, America split wide open. Some called Thomas a hero, others called him a liar, a fraud, a traitor, but no one ignored him. Not anymore. The families named in the journal sent lawyers, threats, and hired men to intimidate anyone involved with the investigation. The streets around Harriet's office filled with shadows that followed her home. Thomas changed boarding houses 3 times in 2 weeks, but the truth was out, and powerful men hate nothing more than a truth they can't control. Then came the summons from Washington. A congressional committee wanted to examine the evidence, not because they believed the story, most didn't, but because the scandal had grown too big to ignore. Some politicians wanted to use it against the Confederacy, others wanted to crush it quietly. Either way, Thomas and Harriet were ordered to testify. In January 1864, Thomas stood before 13 lawmakers. Their faces a mix of skepticism, hostility, and reluctant curiosity. Harriet sat beside him, a stack of documents in her lap sharp as weapons. The gallery behind them overflowed with journalists and Southern representatives desperate to discredit him. Thomas told his story plainly, no dramatics, no begging, no fear. He told them about Charleston, his mother, the journal, the years of hiding, the deaths of Marcus and Judith, the threats, the truth. When one senator mocked him, "How do we know you didn't invent all this?" Thomas answered without raising his voice. I did not invent the ship logs in Rhode Island. I did not invent the property deeds in Charleston. I did not invent the court filings in Massachusetts. My mother did not invent the crimes your ancestors committed. The room went silent. Then Harriet testified, detailing the verification process. Every record matched the journal. Every date aligned with independent sources. Every accusation rooted in provable documentation. Still, some lawmakers refused to believe. So another compromise was reached. A group of experts, historians, linguists, document examiners would study the original journal under government supervision. If they declared it authentic, Congress would be forced to acknowledge it. In April 1864, Thomas led the examination team to Detroit and opened the vault. The journal was studied for 2 days under armed guard. Paper age, ink composition, handwriting layers, linguistic style, shipping details, everything was analyzed. Their verdict was simple. The journal is authentic. Its contents match independent historical records. It could not have been fabricated by Mr. Freeman or any modern hand. Washington had no choice. In May 1864, Congress published a quiet, careful report acknowledging the journal as credible historical documentation exposing patterns of fraud, kidnapping, and criminal deception in the early American slave trade. They avoided naming families directly. Cowards rarely speak plainly, but the truth was out. And the nation heard it. Some families panicked. Some tried to discredit the findings. Some doubled down with threats. But a few, very few, did something different. One afternoon in June, a well-dressed woman knocked on Thomas's door. She introduced herself as Catherine Harrington Sutherland, a descendant of one of the merchants his mother had exposed. "I came to apologize," she said. My family built its wealth on lies and human suffering. I cannot undo that, but I can acknowledge it. She handed him a deed donating her family's ancestral property to build a school for freedmen. It isn't enough, she whispered. It can never be enough. But it is something. Others followed her example, though not many. The truth, once revealed, had a way of uncovering people's souls, and most didn't like what was underneath. After the war ended in 1865, Thomas moved back to Michigan. He married a schoolteacher, Sarah Jenkins, and built a quiet life. He raised his children on stories of courage, truth, and survival, not bitterness. He never sought fame, never tried to profit from the journal. He kept working, kept writing letters to scholars, kept helping historians understand the buried crimes of the past. In 1891, he donated the original journal to the Library of Congress, ensuring it would survive long after he was gone. His only condition: it must remain available to any researcher seeking the truth. Thomas Freeman died in 1912. Aged 69, he lived long enough to see Reconstruction betrayed, Jim Crow rise, and the nation repeat its sins in new forms. But he never regretted what he did. Truth doesn't fix the world, he once wrote. It only forces the world to stop lying. That is the first step toward anything better. Decades later, in 1968, scholars rediscovered the journal and published the first full translation. Its revelations reshaped the study of American history. Generations of researchers, activists, and students traced their understanding of early America back to the work of an unnamed African woman, and the silent child she entrusted with the future, her son. The boy sold for $3. The boy they tried to erase. The boy who carried a nation's buried truth across a continent and into the light. He was never meant to survive. He did. And because he did, so did the truth.